Do you want your teenager to go on the adventure of a lifetime, all the while learning the ability to know God's truth, discern wisely, and take godly action in the world? My name is Andrew Hawk, and I'm the camp director at the Excel Summer Leadership Camp. Every summer, we take teenagers on 2-week adventures to help them grow in their leadership, discernment, and Christ-like character. Between camping, rock climbing, hiking, and whitewater rafting, campers build lifelong friendships while also training in Excel College's game-changing critical thinking method. They'll learn to filter through the cultural messages of the day with godly wisdom, and to learn how to apply those in the method in real-life context through wilderness first aid and CPR training. A few months ago, I received a message from Melissa, one of our past campers. When her mom and her were overseas, her mother got injured, and she used her training to make a huge difference, according to doctors, to be able to get help when it was needed. We love to hear stories like this. Not only do campers leave with practical skills, but also with a deeper faith in Jesus and lifelong community. I want to personally invite your teenager to join us this summer by going to theexcelcamp.org to learn more. That's theexcelcamp.org.
I've been incorporating Organifi into my daily routine to help manage stress and boost my energy, and it's made such a difference. We all need a little extra support to keep our bodies healthy and energized, especially when tackling daily stresses and nutritional gaps. And Organifi green juice is just perfect for this. It's packed with essential superfoods and a clinical dose of ashwagandha, which helps reduce stress and support healthy cortisol levels. And you can also try Organifi red juice, which offers a superfood punch that boosts your energy naturally without caffeine and with only 2 grams of sugar. It's so easy to use Organifi blends. You just mix them with water or your favorite beverage while on the go. And they don't compromise on taste. Organifi is dedicated to offering the best tasting superfood products on the market at a cost that works out to less than $3 a day. You can enjoy the benefits of high quality superfoods without breaking the bank. Are you ready to give your body the nutrition it craves? Visit www.organifi.com/bestofyou and use code bestofyou for 20% off your entire order. That's ORGANIFI.com/bestofyou and use code bestofyou. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Alison, and I'm so glad you're here to discover what brings out the best of you. This podcast is all about breaking free from painful patterns, mending the past, and discovering our true selves in God. I can't wait to get started as we learn together how to become the best version of who we are with God's help. Hey everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Best of You podcast. Today we're diving into a topic that is just so important. It's one that affects so many of us in ways we may not even realize. And the topic is narcissism. We hear this word a lot these days. It gets thrown around in conversations about toxic relationships, leadership failures, and even the broader culture we live in. Lately, I just feel like I see this deepening pattern of what I would call image management, where we live in a culture where there's so much focus on the persona, on the perception, right? On how to craft my image about how other people see me, whether it's through social media, whether it's through reality television, whatever it may be, there's such a focus on that image, on that perception, on manipulating how people see me. There's so much focus on that as opposed to a focus on this inner work of really becoming a person who is good and kind and true and confident and empowered and full of life, right? Where there's just this deep well of goodness and character and integrity. That takes work to invest in that process of becoming a whole and true person. And sometimes, I'm going to be honest with you, when I'm looking at the culture around us, I get a little dismayed. I feel like the focus is so much on those surface images, on the persona that we want the world to see us as, that we are neglecting the much more important and deeper work of really attuning to the parts of our own soul. And so it's brought to mind this conversation about narcissism. We hear this word a lot, but what does it really mean? And more importantly, how do we protect ourselves from it? Not only in our relationships, how do we spot someone with narcissistic tendencies so that we can protect ourselves, but also from the particles of narcissism that exist in the air around us, in the culture around us? How do we protect our own souls? Here's the truth. when we aren't deeply connected to our own emotions, our own boundaries, and our own spirit-led inner compass, our own inner wisdom, we become more vulnerable to the manipulation, to the gaslighting, to the emotional entanglements, to even just some of the superficial posturing in the world all around us. And here's the even harder part. Many of us were never taught how to prioritize this inner work in the first place. Many of us have been taught to look to others, to be trusting of others, to prioritize being loving toward others. And these are all good qualities. But just as important is what the Bible says about not being naive, about being wise, about being discerning, about being shrewd as the serpent and innocent as the dove. We so often have not been taught how to do this work, to listen to our own inner wisdom, to the prompting of the Holy Spirit who cues us to dangers in our environment, to untruths in our environment, to agendas in our environment that are not of God. The Bible itself affirms the importance of this inner compass. Proverbs speaks of guarding the heart because everything flows from it. Jesus models inner integrity, where he is never swayed by flattery, nor does he shrink back in fear. He stands strong and anchored and rooted in the power of his inner conviction. And in a world that is increasingly chaotic and confusing, and where everyone seems to be trying to manipulate the truth for their own agenda, one of the most powerful things we can do is cultivate this spirit-led inner discernment within ourselves. And it takes work and it takes attunement. But when we truly know our own selves, we can begin to recognize manipulation faster. We can more quickly get to those healthy boundaries, and we can learn to trust our instincts, that God-given inner alert system, and our spiritual discernment. And that's why today's episode is so important. I'm going to first share with you an excerpt from an old episode. It was actually the first episode of the Best of You podcast, where I talk about what narcissism really is, the signs to watch for. And then I'm going to come back in with some commentary about how to protect yourself through doing this inner work. So whether you've experienced a narcissistic relationship in a church community, in a marriage, or in your own family, or whether you're just someone who is troubled a little bit by what's going on in the world right now, and you feel dissettled and you can't figure out where the truth lies, I hope this episode will help provide some clarity for you, not only in what to guard against in the world around us, but also this incredibly powerful gift God has given us of agency and God-given holy discernment within our own selves. Starting the new year with health goals is common, but sticking to them, that's the hard part, right? And that's where getting a little expert support can make all the difference. I'm a big fan of expert support, especially in areas where I don't know very much. And that's why I'm so excited to tell you about Faye. Faye is a groundbreaking platform that connects you directly with your own personal registered dietitian. Faye makes expert nutrition guidance both accessible and affordable. And because they accept over 700 insurance plans, getting started could cost you absolutely nothing out of pocket. With Faye, it's not about temporary diets, but developing a lasting, healthy relationship with food. That is so important to me. And Faye's dietitians work one-on-one to tailor a nutrition plan just for you, focusing on your unique needs and health goals. Signing up is simple, and whether you prefer virtual or in-person sessions, Faye fits into your lifestyle seamlessly. They're dedicated to providing personalized care that makes a real difference. And now, achieve lasting results with the help of a registered dietitian through Faye. Listeners of The Best of You can qualify to see a registered dietitian for as little as $0 by visiting faynutrition.com/bestofyou. That's Faye, F-A-Y, nutrition.com/bestofyou. One last time, that's faynutrition.com/bestofyou. And make sure you use our URL so they know I sent you. As we work to care for ourselves and appreciate our own worth, we all deserve a touch of elegance or even luxury from time to time. Yet, treating ourselves can often feel like an indulgence we should avoid. And that's why I was delighted to discover Quince, a brand that marries luxury with affordability. Imagine slipping into a 100% Mongolian cashmere sweater for just $50, or dressing up in washable silk tops and dresses. They also have organic cotton sweaters and even 14-karat gold jewelry. And the best part is that all items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. How do they do it? Well, Quince partners directly with top factories, eliminating costly middlemen, and passes those savings right back to us. Plus, they only work with factories that uphold safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices using premium materials. I personally love their silk blouses and cashmere sweaters. They've become staples in my own wardrobe, and I just feel so confident and comfortable and well cared for when I'm wearing them. Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Visit quince.com/bestofyou for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/bestofyou to enjoy free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/bestofyou. Let's dive in to talk a little bit about what is narcissism really. Narcissism in many ways represents the worst of who we can become. It's the opposite of a strong, healthy sense of self. It's a picture of what we want to move away from. And a lot of people don't understand this about narcissism. They see it as someone being too full of themselves, when the reality is it's the absence of a core sense of self. And we'll unpack that a little bit as we go. If you've been in a relationship with a narcissistic parent, pastor, partner, friend, anyone, it's really devastating. It's really hard to see it, to name it, and to find your way out of that kind of a relationship. But the term is also often misused in ways that can be damaging. So it's really important that we understand it, since we're hearing it a lot. All right, so to define narcissism, I'm going to look to two primary sources. And because this is a podcast where we talk about faith and psychology, we're going to look at the Bible and we're going to look at the DSM for our definition of narcissism. The DSM is a diagnostic and statistical manual. It's what psychologists use to classify and describe patterns of human behaviors. It's exactly what we're doing here. So it gives us a picture of how the world of psychology is seeing these behaviors. And it's only one picture. There are many ways of looking at this, but I find it to be helpful when we're trying to understand these things. So this is how I define it in its simplest terms, and that is that narcissism is the absence of a strong sense of self. And the reality is that someone who is narcissistic is very far from their true sense of self, from their God-made self. There's a bit of a black hole inside it, a bit of a void. And as a result, someone who's narcissistic has to take everything in the world around them as sort of an object to try to fill that void inside of them. Everyone in the world around a narcissist really only exists to help that person fill their own void inside. The narcissist can't really connect inwardly to a healthy core sense of self out of which to give out to others. So they're always trying to fill that void on the inside. So with that in mind, here's what the DSM, which is this manual used by psychologists, says about narcissistic behaviors. These are the criteria that are used to diagnose someone who is narcissistic. The first and important point is that it's a pervasive pattern of behaviors. And we'll get into more of what we mean by that word pervasive. But here are some of the checklists. A grandiose sense of self-importance, someone who's preoccupied with fantasies of success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love, sort of this idealized fantasy of love. Someone who requires excessive admiration. They might have a sense of entitlement, which is an unreasonable expectation of special treatment, or maybe they want you to automatically comply with whatever they think or want or need in any given moment. They lack empathy, which means they are either unable or unwilling to recognize or identify or come alongside the feelings of other people. They are someone who exploits other people. And this is what I mean by this idea that they're looking at you really only as someone to serve their needs, to sort of fill that void inside of them. You're just an object in their world. Arrogance is a feature of narcissism, as well as envy. Now, here's the thing. We all have some of these qualities. And in order to meet the criteria to be diagnosed as someone who's narcissistic, you have to have a bunch of these qualities. And remember that word, they have to be pervasive. And we'll talk more about what that means. But before we get there, I want to look at a passage from the Bible that I think really describes this idea of narcissism really well in a way that's amazing to me because it's long before the word ever really existed in our modern vernacular. So listen to me read these words from 2 Timothy 3. Now I'm reading from the Message version. Okay, you ready? This is 2 Timothy 3, 1-5. Don't be naive. There are difficult times ahead. People are going to be self-absorbed, money-hungry, self-promoting, stuck up, profane, contemptuous, crude, coarse, dog-eat-dog, unbending, slanderers, impulsively wild, cynical, treacherous, ruthless, bloated windbags, addicted to lust, and allergic to God. They'll make a show of religion, but behind the scenes, they're animals. Stay clear of these people. So that's from the Message version, again, from 2 Timothy 3. I'll link to it in the show notes. But it's so striking to me. There's a way in which nothing is really new under the sun. You're going to find that as we dig into this podcast. All these psychology buzzwords are in many ways new words for old behaviors as old as the sun. So another thing that's interesting to me is N.T. Wright's translation of this very same passage uses the phrase, people will be in love with themselves, and there will be a pattern of godlessness. Now, again, this idea that people are in love with themselves, not so much because they actually love themselves in that way that we're supposed to care for ourselves, but they're just in love with this idea of themselves because there's such a void at the center. And so there's no real ability for love to flow vertically and horizontally. They're only able to bring love toward me inwardly. I can only bring the love in. I don't have anything on the inside from which to pour out to others. That's the narcissist. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. So I want to start, I just want to pull out 3 different things from what we just read. Number 1, this idea, don't be naive. Don't be naive in this world. And you know this, you're listening to this episode, so you're obviously interested in this idea. You know there's toxicity in our world. I wish there wasn't. I wish I could get on here and talk about nice, happy things all the time, and I promise we will. But it's real. You know, narcissism is real, and we can't be naive. And if you find yourself in a narcissistic relationship without knowing what it is, it's really helpful to understand it so that you can name it. This is biblical. It's biblical to be wise, to be discerning, to be careful, to be cautious, to arm ourselves with that shield of knowledge that I was talking about. The other thing I want you to pay attention to is this idea of patterns of behaviors. Both in the DSM and the Bible, there's this emphasis on patterns. This is so important. It's not just a one-off. Any one of us can be selfish, self-centered, entitled, arrogant, or envious. Any one of us can be any of those things in any given moment. If any one of those behaviors at one moment in time makes someone a narcissist, we are all narcissists. Right there. I mean, I know I am, right? If any one of those behaviors makes somebody a narcissist. There's a difference between someone who's self-centered in a moment and someone who has a constant, pervasive pattern of only being able to see the world through their own self-centered lens, who is incapable of empathizing with another human. This is a pervasive pattern of self-focused behaviors over time with reckless disregard for other people. Okay, so don't be naive. These are patterns of behaviors. So the third thing I want to pull out of 2 Timothy in particular is this idea that he says they'll make a show of religion. So religious people are not immune from these toxic behaviors. I know many of you have been hurt by narcissistic behaviors in faith communities, in faith-filled homes. You may have grown up in a home where faith was shown, but the way that it was lived out was really toxic. So people of faith are not immune from these patterns of behaviors. In fact, Timothy highlights that these behaviors will come from people making a show of religion, right? He's highlighting this. And I don't want to stigmatize any one group, but we can be really quick to point to celebrity culture or politicians or other go-to places. But the truth is, these toxic behaviors are also in faith communities, and they can be even more hurtful there because we're not expecting them there. We're oftentimes taking our guard down when we go into these faith communities. And so it's even more harmful than when we bump up against these toxic behaviors. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Just like we invest in our physical health, our mental well-being deserves that same commitment. And many people shy away from therapy just due to the cost alone. Traditional sessions can range from $100 to well over $200 each session. And that's where BetterHelp can be a great option, offering a much more affordable solution by cutting those costs up to 50% per session. With BetterHelp, you're not just saving money, you're investing in a flexible, flat-fee service that allows you weekly sessions, making quality mental health care both accessible and convenient. And the thing about therapy is that it's not just for those dealing with significant trauma. It's also about guiding you in day-to-day decision-making, setting healthy boundaries, developing positive coping skills, and empowering you to be the best version of yourself. BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy provider with over 30,000 therapists helping more than 5 million people worldwide. The convenience is unparalleled. You can start a session with just one click, easily fitting it into your busy schedule. And if you feel the need, you can switch therapists at any time. Here's your chance to make a substantial change in your life. Your well-being is truly worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/bestofyou today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/bestofyou. It can be so hard to find a good mattress, and sleep is so important to our health. And that's why I want to share a bit about my Birch mattress experience. Initially, I chose Birch for our guest room, but it was so comfortable that we got one for our master bedroom. I've noticed a significant improvement in how refreshed I feel each morning. Choosing Birch was important to me because I value sleeping on natural materials and avoiding harmful off-gassing. Plus, the hypoallergenic and organic materials used in Birch mattresses means I'm resting easy in comfort and durability. And each one is constructed with non-toxic materials and designed with breathability to keep you cool all night. And the best part? Trying a Birch mattress is risk-free with their 100-night trial. It ships directly to your door for free, rolled up in a box, and is so easy to set up. And Birch owns its own manufacturing facility and relies on skilled manufacturers to ensure the highest quality. Plus, every mattress comes with a 25-year warranty. I want all my listeners to enjoy a deep, restful night's sleep with a new mattress from Birch. Go to birchliving.com/bestofyou March 28th through 31st for a flash sale of 25% off site-wide. That's birchliving.com/bestofyou and get 25% off site-wide. birchliving.com/bestofyou. I want to shift now to just talk about some of the specific toxic strategies that narcissists might use in their relationships, because again, this is about arming yourself with knowledge. The first one is what's called love bombing. You may have heard this term. It just means that at the start of the relationship, this person might shower you with intense affection, flattery, gifts. They just shower you with all the right things to woo you. They might say things like, I've never met anyone like you. I love you so much. You're my soulmate. And they might say these things very quickly. It might even throw you off guard a little bit, but it also feels good, right? But the problem is that this doesn't gain traction over time. The actions don't line up with the words. And so you're left with this vague feeling of confusion. They're saying one thing, but we're not getting any deeper. I'm not seeing how their actions back this up. I'm not sensing any depth to this. This feels really on the surface. Number two, this word gaslighting that gets overused, but can really happen. And this is where someone with narcissistic tendencies will try to distort reality. They'll try to make you doubt your own perceptions and your own sanity. They might say things to you like, that never happened. You're overreacting. It's just that you're sensitive. You're the problem, right? They try to maintain power by making you question your own memories, your own emotions, your own experience. And it's a really effective strategy because we're human, we're imperfect. We do sometimes overreact. We do sometimes misremember things. And so this is why that pattern of behaviors over time is so important to remember when you're in a new relationship, whether it's a new faith community, whether it's a new friendship, whether it's a new love relationship, whether you're trying to figure out whether to trust someone in leadership, to just look for this, be wise, be cautious, exercise some caution. If someone's coming on really strong at the start of a relationship, just inside your own spirit, hold that posture of actions will speak louder than words. There's a quote that I love that says, "Your actions speak so loudly, I can't hear your words." And this is the kind of thing we want to watch for. Your actions speak so loudly, I can't even hear your words because your actions are telling me everything I need to know. That means your actions, you're doing the things I need. You're showing up with integrity, right? You're honoring me in actions every single day. That means so much more to me than words. Your actions are speaking loudly. Watch for the actions. Number 3, we talked about this a little bit in the episode with Adam Young, triangulation. Someone who has a very fragile sense of self, who cannot stand in their own inner conviction, will try to triangulate. They'll try to bring in other parties. They might say things to you like, well, my ex never acted like this, or my other friends don't question me in this way, or no one else in our faith community is raising these issues. They might even be more overt, like, look at all these followers I have. Look at how many friends I have, right? Who are you to question me? If someone has to triangulate in that way, bring in other people to make themselves feel good, I would be curious about their actions, right? When someone is really healthy and strong in their own inner conviction, they don't need to rely on that kind of triangulated herd mentality. They know they can say, listen, my actions speak for themselves. I'm not perfect, but my actions speak for themselves. Look at my actions. I don't need to convince you of the truth of my character, of the integrity of my character. And then another one, number 4, blame shifting. They'll often shift blame onto others. They'll blame others for their own flaws instead of taking responsibility. You're the selfish one when actually they're the one being selfish. You have anger issues when they're the one who is actually raging out of control. They want to avoid accountability, and so they're constantly shifting the blame onto you. And then lastly, playing the victim. They flip the narrative to make themselves look like the victim, even when they're the one causing harm. It might sound like this: after everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me? I was just trying to help, and now you're attacking me? Right? They're trying to manipulate emotions and avoid responsibility. A healthy person can say something to the effect of, I hear you. I get that you're hurt. I understand. And they might even take it one step further and say, I'd like to share with you my perspective because that wasn't my intent. 2 things can be true in healthy relationships. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I can honor and validate that this was hurtful. A healthy person can have that healthy 2-way back and forth. They're not constantly playing the victim. Now, in church environments, this can take on an even more insidious and subtle approach, spiritual gaslighting, where someone uses scripture or religious beliefs to invalidate your concerns. Well, you need to pray more. God told me this. So you're actually questioning God, right? Someone's hiding behind God to defend their poor behaviors. Another one, you're being rebellious. You're being divisive. I've heard this one a lot, right? Where there's toxicity at the leadership level. Again, there are ways to hear people out and hear their concerns and honor someone's humanity. It doesn't mean if you're a leader listening, I know this can be hard because sometimes people come to you with complaints and you're like, I'm doing the best I can, right? You don't always have to honor every single complaint someone brings to you as a leader. Sometimes you can say, I get it. That's hard. I want to hear you out, even as you're reckoning with the fact that, I've got to lead in this way, but there's always humility at the root of that. You're never trying to gaslight someone else. And another thing I see, and I hate to name this, but it's true, so I'm going to, is this kind of false humility, which is a form of image management. This is so prevalent in our culture today, but we do see it in our church cultures too, where someone wants to appear humble. They want to appear self-sacrificing. They want to appear deeply spiritual, but they only want to appear that way for public admiration. So this might look like serving very loudly and visibly while secretly behind closed doors, seeking power, trying to get ahead out of selfish ambition instead of really trying to lift up other people. Sometimes I see this in the form of people really loudly saying, I do this all for God's glory. It's only for God, right? And really, they kind of like the recognition and loyalty. And to be honest, I'd rather our Christian leaders say publicly something to the effect of, there are parts of me at times that really do look at the numbers and that really do want people to follow me and like my work. That's just part of being human. And I also hope that through my own feeble and complicated human efforts that somehow some goodness of God would be revealed to people in need of God's love and God's goodness, right? I tend to be drawn more toward folks who take that posture, right? Where there's that self-awareness of our own human frailties and complexities. And then another way that I'll see some of this narcissism play out in church communities through shaming and public call-outs, right? Where individuals are called out publicly or in meetings or even in prayer groups. That gets really insidious to pressure them into compliance, where there's sort of this kind of gossip, like some people in this church are being divisive and we've got to call them out. We've got to hold them accountable. When in fact, those people are really and truly trying to stand up for what's right and what's true and what's good. And that person in leadership is simply trying to avoid taking accountability. It's toxic to faith communities. So, how do we protect ourselves from narcissism in our relationships, in our cultures, in our communities? Number one, we have to learn to honor our own God-given instincts. This is to the point of that internal work that we are often talking about on the podcast. If something smells funny, pay attention to that. Notice that part of you. Get curious about it, right? It takes some time to learn how to attune to your own inner compass because our own compasses can get out of whack at times. I'll be honest with you. At times, I've had to call a friend and say, I'm really triggered by this behavior, but I'm not sure if it's my own past wounds, right, that are heightened to this particular type of leadership, or if this person is really doing something wrong. So that's number two. Get support. Find a few trusted advisors to bounce things off of, to help you grow in that holy discernment, to give you that objective take on, yeah, I see it too. What you're saying doesn't sound good. I think your instincts are right on. Or to say, listen, I hear what you're saying and I get it. I've had a different experience with this person. I found that they can actually take accountability, right? You're getting that little bit of healthy accountability. Number three, again, another big part of this inner work is to learn how to differentiate from the approval of others. We've been talking about this a lot recently on the podcast, that when we need external approval at all costs, we set ourselves up for being manipulated by others. And so I'm not taking anybody outside of you off the hook. It's never right to try to manipulate or exploit or hurt someone. But our part of the equation is to get really good at being okay with sometimes introducing healthy conflict or healthy difference into a conversation or relationship. Sometimes I call it testing the relationship, introducing a different opinion, introducing a preference, introducing a question mark, right? I'm not sure I agree with you on this, or I'm not sure I see it the same way you do. Are you open to hearing my perspective? You're testing that relationship a little bit. And that takes some core strength because they might not like it. That person may ghost you. They may try to manipulate you. They may stonewall you. They may turn away from you, but better to find out on the front end of any new relationship. So here's the bottom line. The more deeply you know yourself in partnership with God's Spirit, the more intimately you are connected to your thoughts, your emotions, your boundaries, your internal compass, this God-given compass God has given you to help you navigate your way through life, the less vulnerable you will be to narcissistic manipulation. This isn't just good psychology. This is spiritual wisdom. Proverbs 4:23 tells us, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Guarding your heart isn't about building walls or shutting people out. It's about wisdom, discernment, and clarity. It's about learning to recognize when someone is drawing you into dysfunction versus when someone is inviting you into true, healthy, deep relationship. When you know yourself, when you tend to your inner world with honesty and care, you become someone who cannot be easily deceived. You become someone who doesn't fall for flattery, manipulation, or guilt tripping. You become someone who walks in strength, wisdom, and deep alignment with God's truth. And I want to close with Psalm 1:1-3. Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on God's law day and night. Remember, God's law is written on your heart. Okay? God's law is written on your heart through the coming of the Holy Spirit. This is what Jeremiah prophesied and Jesus made true in John 14. God's law has been written on your own heart. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and the leaves will not wither. Whatever you do will prosper. When we root ourselves in truth and God's wisdom and an honest relationship with our own soul, we become like that strong, unshakable tree. We stop being swayed by flattery, fear, or manipulation. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of The Best of You. It would mean so much if you take a moment to subscribe. You can go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts and click the plus or follow button. That will ensure you don't miss an episode and it helps get the word out to others. While you're there, I'd love it if you leave your 5-star review. I look forward to seeing you back here next Thursday. And remember, as you become the best of who you are, you honor God, you heal others, and you stay true to your God-given self.